Oh, there's an email.
Okay, thank you. Please be seated. Okay, welcome to the 10th meeting of City Council, May 14th, 2024. I'm going to start off with the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we're gathered today on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape, and Adawandron peoples. We honor and respect the history, languages, and culture of the diverse Indigenous people who call this territory home. We acknowledge all of the treaties that are specific to this area. The two-row Wampum Treaty of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy Silver Covenant Chain, the Beaver Hunting Ground Treaty of the Haudenosaunee Nanfan Treaty of 1701, the McKee Treaty of 1790, the London Township Treaty of 1796, the Huron Tract Treaty of 1827 with the Anishinaabe and the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Wampum of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee. The three Indigenous nations that are neighbors to London are the Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and Munsee Delaware Nation, who all continue to live as sovereign nations with individual and unique languages, cultures, and customs. I also want to acknowledge that the City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternate formats and communication supports for meetings upon request. To make a request specific to this meeting, you can contact councilagenda@london.ca or 519-661-2489, extension 2425. Next, we have what is always a pleasure to have a guest here to sing the national anthem. Alex Dolphin is a singer-songwriter from London, Ontario, with a new sound in the folk and indie community. He is strongly influenced by classic Canadian artists like Gordon Lightfoot, Dallas Green, and Sam Roberts. He's integrating himself into the London music scene and has been featured as one of the main anthem singers at London Majors baseball games. And the home opener is this Friday, so if you want to go, you should check it out. Although Alex is not singing this Friday, but he's going to be regularly featured at the opening of games. He'll be showcasing his music through various performances within the community this year as well. So please rise and join me in welcoming Alex, who will now sing the national anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot, in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see the rise, our true north strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God, keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Thank you.
Okay, disclosures of pecuniary interest. Any colleagues have anything to disclose? All right, recognitions, there are none today. Review of confidential matters to be considered in public, there are none. That brings us to council in closed session, of which there are 4 items. I'll look for a motion to move into closed session. I see Councillor Van Meerbergen and Councillor Hopkins willing to move in second. Any discussion on moving to closed session? Okay, seeing none, we'll open that for voting.
Indicating Councillor Trossel votes yes. I'll vote yes. Thank you. Indicating Councillor Van Meerbergen votes yes. Closing the vote, motion carries 14-0.
Okay, we'll move to Committee Room 5, colleagues. And for the public, we'll be back as soon as we can. Okay, please be seated. Okay, that takes care of the in-camera session. We're on to the confirmation and signing of previous minutes. We actually have two sets of minutes that we can approve today. We'll do them both together. The 8th special meeting held on April 17th and the 9th meeting held on April 23rd. I'll look for a mover for both of those. See Councillor Van Meerbergen, seconded by Councillor Cuddy. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay, we'll open that for voting.
Closing the vote, motion carries 14-0.
Okay, communications and petitions. There are three, if you look at the added agenda. We have a motion to refer all of those to the relevant parts of the agenda, so if there's no objections to doing it that way, which I see none, we'll look for a mover to refer those to the relevant parts of the agenda. Councillor Lehman, seconded by Councillor Hopkins. Any discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, we'll open that for voting.
Closing the vote, motion carries 14-0.
All right, there are no motions for which notice was given, so we're on to reports. The 9th report of the Corporate Services Committee is up first, so I'll turn it over to Councillor McAllister to present that report.
Thank you, and through the chair, I'm happy to present the 9th report of the Corporate Services Committee. We have items 1 through 11. I've got no request to pull any of them. Just in terms of order of operations, what we discussed, there was a referral of consideration of appointments for the London Community Advisory Committees. We did refer that to SPPC. And in terms of the proclamations, there was also a request to get some more information with those proclamation requests. So with that, I'm happy to move items 1 through 11.
Okay, would anybody like anything dealt with separately? Okay, so the councillor, you're going to move the whole batch? Okay, so that's moved by the chair. Any discussion on any of the items within the corporate services report? Okay, seeing none, we can open that report for voting.
Closing the vote, motion carries 14-0.
And that concludes my report. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next is the 6th report of the Community and Protective Services Committee. Councillor Pelosi is away, so I believe Councillor Ferreira is presenting the report. Go ahead, Councillor Ferreira.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to report out for the 6th report of the Community and Protective Services Committee. I have one item to be pulled, item number 7 by the Deputy Mayor. And with that, I would be free to put items 1 through 6 on the floor.
Okay, I'll just look to see if anybody wants anything else dealt with separately before you put that motion on the floor. I don't see any, so yes, you can move 1 through 6, and you're willing to do so. Is there discussion or debate on items 1 through 6? I have two councillors, Councillor Rahman and then Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, and through you, I just wanted to follow up on item 2.2, the data regarding impacts of asylum claimants on London's emergency shelter system. Just wondering if there's any information that can be shared with members of council and the public on what has transpired since the CPSC meeting leading up to now. And I know we were having some discussions at that committee around what our process will be for engaging IRCC and for IHAP funding. And I know that there's been some work done, so I wanted to give the opportunity for that update.
I don't know if I'm going to the city manager or Mr. Dickens first, who's online, I believe.
Through
Okay.
you, Your Worship.
Go to you,
I can
Mr.
take
Dickens.
this.
Yep, go ahead.
So thank you. And so for members of council, they will have received a briefing note from me about the updates to the asylum claimant process. We also, as of 11:06 this morning, finally received correspondence from the IHAP program administrators indicating that information can be filed in terms of data sets and the impacts and financial impacts of asylum claimants on the emergency shelter system. Those submissions can be made up until May 22nd of this year. So the team has just received all of the information. We've been received the process by which to submit the information. We will be submitting likely our full financial impact. However, as per the briefing note to members of council, I will note that other municipalities that have made a claim have been required to enter into a cost sharing agreement. So the federal government doesn't necessarily fund the impact of asylum claimants on the emergency shelter system at 100% impact. For example, Waterloo operates at a 75-25 cost share, where the region of Waterloo is picking up 25% of the contribution. So should we be required to enter into a cost sharing agreement, we will be bringing forward a request of council to direct us to allocate those funds accordingly. So the team will start to compile that submission, and we will submit it ahead of the May 22nd deadline. Thank you.
Councillor Rahman.
Thank you. I want to thank Mr. Dickens and staff for their work on getting this information, not just to council, but to the community. I think it's really important here for us to note that, you know, when this motion was brought forward, it was to make sure that we had a fulsome understanding of what we're seeing in our community. And I still think we're gauging just what the impact is. And so I want to thank him and his team for the work they're doing to ensure that we understand the picture and that we provide the federal government with the most accurate information in order to apply for funding that's reasonable and makes sense for our community. So thank you for that.
Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that same point, there's a lot of buzz in the community around this and what happened, and I just wondered if staff could reassure the public with the steps that were taken to seek out this funding. I know it wasn't successful, and I'm glad that we are got it now, but I just wondered if we could just know what steps were taken after that was a direction to council.
Mr. Dickens.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. The direction from council was to apply to the IHAP program. What we chose to do as civic administration was bring forward the asylum claimant information to council first before we proceeded to submit any cost recovery requests to the federal government. The team did undergo some research to find out who the contact people were in that application process, as that information was not readily available. So we do appreciate the assistance of our local federal MPs and the mayor's office and others for assisting in making some of those connections for us. We have then underwent a meeting on May 10th with the federal government in which they introduced us to those that oversee the program, explained how the program works, and have indicated there's a strong likelihood that there'll be the ability to claim back or submit costs from the previous year as well. So the team has embarked on compiling all of that information, and again, we will be submitting that ahead of schedule.
Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, that's all.
Perfect, and I'll just echo what Mr. Dickens said. Certainly I said at committee that I would make myself available to support our staff. I did have a conversation with MPs, and as Mr. Dickens indicated, we supported the process as best we could based on the committee's information. I appreciate all of colleagues' concerns, and good to know that we can not only articulate the full costs, but actually ensure that we can capture the costs that are in the past as well. So thanks to Mr. Dickens and his team for their work on this as well. Other speakers to any of the items that the councillors put forward on this committee agenda? Okay, seeing none, then we can open those for voting.
Thank you for your patience. I just had some technical difficulties. Closing the vote, motion carries 14-0.
Councillor Ferreira.
Thank you. And I believe the last item was pulled by the deputy mayor. Are we to do that at this moment?
Yes, so what you can do as the vice chair is put the committee's recommendation on the floor, which contained two pieces. My understanding is then the deputy mayor would like to amend that to include some of the things that were not successful at committee. So your job is to put the committee's recommendation on the floor, then I can go to the individual who pulled it and seek direction from them. So if you're willing to put the committee's recommendation on the floor, then we can proceed.
I'll put the item number 7 on the floor.
Perfect, thank you. I have the deputy mayor first on the speakers list.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I want to say, first of all, credit to, because he's presenting the report today, I've kind of agreed to pinch hit for Councillor Ferreira and put this on the floor since he can't move it while he's presenting the report. As you know, Community Protective Services had a couple of members absent. There was some discussion about a couple of parking projects, and there were some tie votes. However, the committee didn't submit anything that said take no further action. It simply received the report. So I'm going to put an amendment on the floor that returns all of those clauses. So I have provided the language to the clerk. It will create an amendment that will create clauses A, B, C, D, E, and F. I'll just take a moment to address those with colleagues. A will put the 1 hour free on-street parking for the core area in place until the end of 2024. B addresses the source of financing for that 1 hour on-street parking at $300,000 from the Economic Development Reserve Fund. C directs the implementation of 1 hour free parking pilot project in municipal lots 1 and 2 in the Old East Village until the end of 2024. D indicates that the source of financing for that would be $30,000 from the Economic Development Reserve Fund. E would be the receiving of the staff report, and F would include Civic Administration being directed to look further into the issues contained within the communication from Arcade that was distributed to members of council.
Yeah, so I'm fine to second that to get it on the floor and going. So that amendment is moved and seconded. It'll come up in the system so you can see just a little bit of a reordering, adding back into the pieces, and then we can start the debate. And I don't know if you want to start off with rationale now, but you can.
Yes, I'll jump right into the rationale. First of all, I think we've heard very clearly from both BIAs downtown and Old East Village that a little bit more runway on the core parking program would be very valuable. We've also heard from the OEV BIA in particular, the councillor, the social service agencies as well, that the parking lot pilot project would be of benefit as well. I am not one to say we are going to continue subsidizing these parking rates forever. I've had discussions with businesses as well and said at some point we have to move away from this and look for another way to do this program. But I think there's value right now in continuing to provide them with some support. It's not the 2 hours core that we provided before. This will be 1 hour during the week, but it does support people being able to pop in and out of businesses in the downtown, make their purchase, or in the OEV, make their purchase, maybe grab a coffee, get back in their car and be on their way. It continues that revitalization post-COVID of the need to get people into our core area again and supporting those local businesses. I do, and I will myself continue to have discussions with business owners about how we move this forward in a way that it's not always coming from municipal funds. But I think that stepping back, and this is a step back for me, it was 2 hours, now we're going to 1, but it provides a little more runway. And if we go to the end of 2024, it gets them through both the busy summer festival season as well as the Christmas holiday market season, which are probably the two biggest times for businesses to take advantage and to rebuild that customer loyalty, to come back and be patrons of those businesses. I do think it's important, and of course, we'll be talking about the arcade funding situation later in the meeting, but the communication we received from Arcade, and having been at the site and heard from Ms. Campbell about the challenges with their volunteers and the parking tags that get stuck in windows and then get driven away, and then the parking tag's not available until the volunteer comes back a week later. That is a problem that we need to solve for them. I don't think that it's a solution that we need to work out on the council floor. I think that's a discussion to have with our staff, with Arcade, about how we better accommodate their volunteers while they're helping on the housing and homelessness crisis. But I want to include that in there, having now been on site and seen what the physical problem is with the accommodation we've provided them. I think there's perhaps a better way to do that through the honk app or something to that effect. So it's an important opportunity to include this in the parking pilot projects. Again, this isn't a forever, but it is a for now, and I encourage colleagues to support it so that our businesses are able to take full advantage of the summer festival season and the Christmas holiday season this year.
Okay, so if colleagues refresh the screen, you'll see that there was an A and a B coming from committee, and this is now an amendment to add a C, D, E, and F, as was just described. I'll look for other speakers on the speakers list. Councillor Ferreira.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, the Deputy Mayor explained it pretty well. What I would add to that is, I see this as a small move with some big impact for the mom and pop shops in the core area. So, what we've seen just in the meantime, where we haven't had the parking, we have had some feedback already from the local businesses speaking to just some of the concerns that they might see with respect to accessibility to their location. So I do believe that this does provide that extra runway. And I do see this as also tied into, downtown revitalization, just to make sure that, we can have that competitive advantage for the local businesses vis-a-vis looking at the rest of the city. So I do hope that we can get some support here. And just looking forward, this does bring us to the end of 2024. I do think that there should be some point, and I will be speaking with staff online too, on how we can plug this into some future possibilities. And that's not necessarily extending parking. I would just like to see some type of plan or development that would just kind of encompass the whole thing, and just so we can make sure that we don't have to be revisiting this again in the future.
Councillor Rahman.
Thank you, and through you. One, can I clarify the motion, please? What the Deputy Mayor read and what's on the screen for me is a little bit different. I just want to check in if there is a piece that mentions city staff working with Arcade in order to come up with a strategy around parking. I thought that that was the supplemental part, the only part I was willing to support.
So just for a councillor, it's both. So this is the amendment added in. The part that you're looking for is actually a committee recommendation that came forward as B. So it's not part of the vote on the amendment yet, but when we go back to the main motion, it's sitting there as the current B. Okay,
thank you. It just reordered for me, so that's great. As I said, that's the part that I'm willing to support. I wanted to talk a little bit about this, what's in front of us, but first I had a question for administration around how much money is in the Economic Development Reserve Fund.
Go to Ms. Barbeau.
Through the chair, I don't have that right in front of me, but I can look that up and get back to you in a moment.
Do you want to proceed while that gets looked up?
Sure, and I guess just a follow-up for that as well is just how much of that was earmarked. My understanding was that we earmarked a number of funds within that, or we earmarked funds within that account specifically through a business case during the budget, and I just want to know whether or not that is drawing down on another area that we did agree to fund, and therefore could be perhaps taking away some funds for a vital economic development plan that we're also looking at. So I just wanted to get some clarification on that before I proceed in this discussion.
Sure, we'll just give our staff a second to look up those answers. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you through the chair. The balance in the Economic Development Reserve Fund that's uncommitted is approximately $4.2 million.
Thank you, appreciate that. So I'm glad to hear that there's sufficient funding for this in there. However, do have some concerns with drawing down from this amount. And although I see that we have the funds available, I'm not sure that for me, this particular method of allowing for parking meets the particular needs of those that are looking to be downtown. So I do think that we had a program in place that made more sense, in my opinion, for the users that were seeking to use the honk app and be in the core. I do think right now what we have with 1 hour and on-street isn't sufficient enough for what people may be looking for. I understand the value of both, of having the 1 hour because people want to pop in, but at the same time, I'm not sure that that doesn't run counter in a way to what I personally am interested in incentivizing in the core as well. So that's where I am with that. And I am supportive of administration working with Arcade to find a solution, but I do not think that that solution is just 1 hour parking being in municipal lots 1 and 2. Again, just going back to some of the concerns that were shared, they seem to be more than just the cost of 1 hour parking. There seems to be some issues with overlap in terms of schedules and when they would be using that lot. So I don't, personally, I appreciate that we're having this discussion. I'm not sure that these are the programs that will help to address some of those needs that we were hearing from residents.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Other speaker, I have Councillor McAllister and then Councillor Stevenson. I'll look for, and then Councillor Pribble.
Thank you. And through the chair, as the deputy mayor, I think eloquently put, I do think that we need some more runway. I'm willing to support this relief. We have projects both in Argyle and Hamilton Road, which we have funded, which are on a temporary basis. I think that's just a reality in terms of the business districts that we represent. We don't have necessarily large commercial lots. Some of our businesses do, but we don't, by and large, have that everywhere. We do have on-street parking, and this does provide them the opportunity to pop in and out. I think it's still important that we support the core, OEV. They're all experiencing issues that we're trying to deal with, but we do need that extra runway and relief in the short term, and that's why I'm willing to support this. Thank you.
Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you. I hear my colleagues and I appreciate the staff recommendation, but I wish we were in a space of revitalization in Old East Village. I wish it was about bringing people back in a space of recovery, but we are not there. So I guess I haven't asked staff this ahead of time, so I apologize for the on-the-floor question, but is there some requirement for a minimum standards to be upheld in a municipal lot? I mean, we are charging $2.75 an hour in a municipal lot that is full of tents, garbage, open drug use, social disorder of all forms. So is there a certain requirement in terms of standards?
I'll look to Mr. Katolik on standards in municipal lots. Hold on. Point of order. Go ahead, Councillor Trosa. You have to rise, please.
Is that within the scope of the amendment that's on the floor?
Yes. So I will make a ruling on this because I'm allowing the question. This involves a funding program for municipal lots 1 and 2. I think a question about the standards on the upkeep of those lots within 1 and 2 is within the scope of making a decision on the funding program. I would say I think there's a lot of space that this could go down that I would not deem to be germane to the discussion, but the current question I think is fine for the council to determine whether or not she would be supportive or not of the 1 hour parking program in the area. So I'm going to allow this, but I will say clearly, I'm not going to let this stray outside of this, but this question I see is within the scope of the amendment. So I appreciate the point of order, but I'm going to allow the question.
Yes, Your Worship, we have municipal standards in terms of winter maintenance and summer maintenance. The fees for parking are set by municipal council in the fees and charges bylaw.
Councillor Stevenson.
Yes, thank you. So as a follow-up, though, in a situation where parking spaces aren't available due to encampments and there is public safety concerns, what is the, like, it just feels as though we're not addressing the concern here. I would be so supportive of this 1 hour free to incentivize people to come and shop and eat in an amazing district and in our core area. And, you know, we have a strategic plan that talks about a vibrant, safe downtown core area. The Old East Village Midtown is part of that core area. We have a commitment to a safe city for women and girls. Maybe I get to bring it up at another committee meeting. I do have an amendment here that I'm not sure where it belongs. And it's a request for staff to come forward with recommendations to address the public safety concerns in the municipal lots, particularly in the lot behind Arcade, to look at things like funding the wall that will protect the residential homes and the family homes on Queens Ave that back onto there in the meantime until we can get things figured out. But a wall there, possibly more garbage pickup, possibly some security. If I were to put an amendment forward, I'm looking for guidance as to whether this might be the place or whether it might be better with the Arcade mission funding.
So I'm only going by what you described as the amendment. To me, that sounds like a letter to the committee with colleagues on the committee providing the direction to staff to do that. It sounded to me like you've got a couple of things packaged together that are all related. I would suggest not at council, but at committee where colleagues can see what you're proposing, come prepared for some questions, adding to it some direction to staff on that would be the best spot. So the next Community and Protective Services Committee is probably the best spot for something that is of the scope that you're describing right there.
Okay, thank you. I will follow that advice. I am wondering what department at the city is responsible for that economic development property standards in our downtown core area. I know we don't have the core area action plan anymore, but do we have a department at City Hall that is tackling these issues that we have there?
So Councillor, so this is an amendment to the motion. I just need you to link your question back to the amendment that's considered. I'm not saying that that's not a good question to ask, but I need it to be linked to the matter that's before us on the floor. So could you just provide some linkage for me there?
So I guess what I'm looking for is I fully support this amendment, and I would love to have something in there that also commits to a well-run city property standards in these lots. Is that?
I don't think, we don't have Mr. Goodall describe the standards that, like, that sounds to me like something you can add into a committee motion, right? You could fund this and then you want to, because it might not just be this law that she's interested in. It's broader, it's potentially like citywide policy. Yeah. I would suggest, Councillor, that's probably also something that you could add into that other amendment, because it sounds to me like you're not just interested in these two lots, but there might be other locations. If you're talking about, Mr. Katolik articulated the current standards that we use, which are related to the things he mentioned. If you're looking to up kind of the standards generally, that's also probably something that you'll take to a committee discussion, and then, you know, whether it's these two lots or others that could be had there. So I know that might put you in an awkward spot for supporting this motion, but I would say it's probably not the right thing to try to attach that here, given, you know, the scope that it might apply to wider across the city, because we're really just talking about what is a pilot program on these two lots, which is a very, you know, specific funding program for allowing the parking, and that's what came through committee. Didn't make it through committee, it's up here. So that wider discussion is probably better for that other letter that you're contemplating writing.
Okay, thank you. That's what I'll do then. So I would ask for council's support for this amendment. Our core area businesses and the people who love them and want to support them and want them to see them survive would really appreciate the 1 hour incentive. I know it's a small amount of money and people still have to pull out their honk app, but it's funny the difference that makes to people to be able to be willing to commit to come to an area that for many, they feel their personal, they are at risk and their vehicle is at risk in the time that they are choosing to support our core area businesses. So I'm looking for council's support on this. I'm grateful to staff for bringing this forward so quickly. And I will definitely be bringing forward whatever it is that I can do to help us at least get really clear on what it is that we are our standards for our municipal lots when we are committed to a core area, to a safe downtown, to supporting incredible small businesses, arts, and culture. We're a city of music, and
30 seconds.
it would be really great to have parking lots that align with the standard of the UNESCO City of Music.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Pribble next.
Thank you. I will support all of them as I did during the committee meeting. We are on a decreasing this benefit, so we are, in my opinion, in terms of cost-saving money, we are on the right track. And I had various conversations with numerous business owners, with both BIAs and a social agency, and they all see the value in 1 hour. So the value is seen there for the people that, for the customer base that these organizations, businesses are serving. So I think it's a win-win, and I hope we all support it till the end of the year. And by the end of the year, we will come with certain different strategies to make our downtowns and core more welcoming, more invitable. So hopefully we will not be able to use these additional perks. But for now, I really think it's a way to go, and the community, they do see the value in the 1 hour. Thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers to this matter who haven't spoke yet? This is on the amendment, by the way. Okay, seeing none. So this is on the amendment, which is adding the pieces that were suggested, C, D, E, and F, to the committee recommendation. So we'll open that amendment for voting. If colleagues have an error, just give us 1 second. If colleagues have a screen that's frozen, hit Control F5.
Just F5 or Control.
And then voting in progress.
Just F5.
Okay. I had to do Control. Everybody get theirs going? Has anybody have any trouble having that reset? Okay.
Closing the vote, motion carries 11-3.
Okay, so that was the amendment. I'll look for a mover of the as amended now motion. You can move it, yes. So as amended, Councillor Ferreira, and seconded by Councillor Van Meerbergen? Yes? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so now on the as amended motion, which is the committee's parts plus the parts we just added to it, I'll see if there's any speakers. Councillor Trossau, go ahead.
Would it be possible to just pull out A and B and vote for that?
Yeah, I think let's have the debate on the as amended motion just for efficiency. At the end, if you want to pull out the actual final vote on A and B and then the other components, that we added in, we can do that at the end, but let's just, for efficiency, let's have the discussion on the whole piece, and then we can just do the vote separate at the end, so yes.
As long as I'm standing, I'll just say that my position on this has not changed. I believe I've been very consistent all along that I do not doubt that there's a desire to have the parking services. I think the issue is how it should be funded and how long that lasts. Because my worry here is we're just going to keep extending. There's a reasonable possibility that once we get into having people expect this from their hunk app, it's going to be very difficult to change it. And this will just be one of a series of extensions. And I hear some of my colleagues saying, this is the last time I'm going to support this. And I really mean it. And I'm taking people to be in good faith when they say that. But I'm just going to be not supporting, other than A and B, I'm not going to be supporting the rest of this motion. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else on the as amended motion? Go ahead, Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you. As I said, I wish we were in a space of just looking to give our businesses a little extra perk to keep them going during a really challenging time. I mean, if you listen and read about businesses across this country, small businesses particularly, they are really, really struggling. They employ people, they serve our community. They are what makes London great. They are part of what makes London great. A great city has a great core area. It's a destination. And I will say that as a city councillor, I am not proud of our core area right now. It breaks my heart to hear residents talk about how embarrassing it is for them to bring family and friends here. They can't believe what has happened to our city. So in terms of supporting parking, you can have all different reasons for not supporting parking. You'd prefer people take transit. You'd prefer them ride a bus. You don't want to fund it from municipal sources. Well, we are not going to have businesses downtown very much longer if we don't show them some love and support. And I think $330,000 is not a lot of money. It would go a long way in terms of letting Londoners and the London area businesses know that we support them, that we see their plight, and that we are committed to taking action. So I look forward to my council colleagues supporting this. Thank you.
Okay, other speakers on the as amended motion? Councillor Pribble.
I'm just going to add that there was talk in terms of the pandemic and the businesses' challenges. But again, if you look at, please do look at the other things as well in terms of the construction, in terms of the BRT that we are implementing. And these are the areas that are really, truly affected, and they will be affected within this time. I certainly am not going to say that this will be and I never said this would be, by the way, the last time I would support it. We got to do what we got to do, and this time I will certainly support it because the core area needs it, and the value is perceived as positive by the Londoners, by the agencies, and by the businesses. Thank you.
Councillor Ferreira.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for recognizing me. I see this motion as one of council's steps for supporting businesses downtown. And, all the moves that we're making, we are trying to, focus on bringing people down here. And I think one of the big ways that we can support it also is the way we speak about the core area. And if we were to look at the core area today and compare it how the core area looked 2 years ago, it is much, much better than what it is. And one of the big areas of support we can give to the downtown is really speaking about the truth of how it looks now and how we're on a good trajectory going better. So,
Okay, a point of personal privilege. Go ahead. Microphone off.
I just ask my fellow councillor to recognize there's 3 distinct portions of the core area, and not all of them are doing well or are better. My area is much worse.
Okay, so on the point of personal privilege, I think you can recognize that there are different parts of the core. I'm not sure that it crossed the line of privilege or uncomfort, so you've made your point. The councillor can continue with his points. I'm not really sure that met the threshold of an actual point of personal privilege, given the way that we operate them, but your point's been made. Go ahead, Councillor Ferreira.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just trying to distinguish that, there has been a big change downtown, and we are going to get better. But we've already seen some significant improvement in the time being that we've been sitting on this council. So really what I'm trying to say is everything is tied into that revitalization component. Everything is tied into bringing people downtown. And I think we should start really kind of bringing out that message on top of this parking motion that we're working on, of how the downtown is somewhere where people can visit, and it is somewhere where it is better and it is improving. So I am trying to put the message out to the rest of the city, come downtown and check it out for yourselves. Thanks.
Okay, anybody else on the as amended motion? Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. So first, colleagues, I want to say thank you for the support on the amendment, and I do encourage colleagues to support the as amended motion. And I'm going to take this opportunity, I wasn't, but I'm going to take this opportunity to build on what Councillor Ferreira just said. A couple of weeks ago, Councillor Lehman and I were walking around Victoria Park. Yes, believe it or not, we do participate in active transportation sometimes. It's not all about parking our cars. We do walk and get around the downtown when we happen to be in the area. I know that'll make Councillor Frank very happy. But we noticed that when you're walking around, the eye test along Richmond Row is that things are getting better. Last weekend, Dundas Place was alive with thousands of people, many of whom are my fellow comic book nerds for Free Comic Book Day. It was wonderful to see that. There are good things going on, and if you look, and I see that Mr. Wallace has joined us in the gallery, there are cranes in the sky. Hundreds of millions of dollars.
Link this to the motion for me, please.
Yep, hundreds of millions of dollars of investment are coming into our downtown core by the private sector. But to the point of the small businesses, the mom and pops, the uber cool store, Heroes, Attic Books, places like that, these 1 hour pop-in parking opportunities matter. So I have no, and I would not quibble with what Councillor Stevenson said. There's a section of Old East Village that is really, really, really struggling still. Absolutely. And there are some great businesses there too that deserve support and customer business as well. And again, that opportunity to have an hour where you can pop in, make a purchase, grab a coffee, be on your way, that matters. That's the lifeblood of small businesses. It's not the people who are going to come and spend 6 hours on the patio. It's the people who are going to come in once a week and grab a coffee and maybe make another small purchase along the way. So I think that this is an important step. But I do want to say to Councillor Trussell's point, I do want to see a change in how we approach this. I've communicated that to the BIAs. And so for me, that's why the end of 2024 is where I can get to. And I will continue to have discussions with Mr. Morrison, with Ms. Mallet, with others involved on how businesses can be partners in this too. We just saw on another item where we had a corporate sponsor step up for a car-free transit day. Fantastic, and I know that we may not have somebody who can pop up and come up with $300,000 for another parking extension, but I think we need to look at those unique partnership opportunities moving forward. It cannot just always be take it from the public purse. But for now, I hope that we will give this runway, this extension to these smaller businesses who really need it to get through, have a successful summer, have a successful Christmas season, and 2025 sounds crazy to be talking about 2025 right now, but it is on the horizon. And those long-term plans, we have to start thinking about that, what that looks like then. But for now, let's give ourselves the runway to get those plans off the ground.
Okay, that exhausts. Go ahead, Councillor McAllister.
Thank you, and through the chair, just echoing in terms of what Councillor Ferreira, the Deputy Mayor said, my BIA borders both of these BIAs, and so I'm not immune to the issues that have been brought up. I view this as an incentive to support our local businesses. I think it's vitally important. And I encourage Londoners to go to our various business districts. It's not just inner city. We have vibrant commercial districts on the outside, the Hyde Park BIA. We're all in this together. And I really want to switch the narrative from this just tragedy focus to triumphs. We have had triumphs as a city, as our businesses. We're doing what we can. This is one component to collective action, which I think will make an impact in our city. I'm happy to support it, and I hope my colleagues will as well. Thank you.
Okay. That exhausts the speakers now that I have on the as amended motion. Now, how we're going to divide this, colleagues, is we're going to do A, B, and the it being noted, which is essentially that there were communications associated with this, and then we'll do the balance of the motion after that. So the first thing we'll do is the A and the B and the it being noted piece. I'm going to use the same mover and seconder for the as amended motion, both parts. And now the debate is over, we're just going to vote on one, and then we're going to vote on the other. Okay? Everybody's good with that. Okay, so we're going to open A, B, and the it being noted for approval first.
Councillor Van Meerbergen?
I'll vote yes.
Thank you. Noted. Closing the vote. Motion carries 14-0.
Okay, and we'll get the next piece up, which is the balance of the motion. Yep, same mover and seconder. We'll open that for voting.
Closing the vote. Motion carries 11-3.
Okay, I think that exhausts the committee's report. Yep, as amended motion is done. Okay, thank you very much for presenting, Councillor Ferreira. We'll move on to the next committee report, which is the 7th report of the Civic Works Committee. I'll have Councillor Hopkins present the report for that committee.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to put the 7th report of the Civic Works Committee on the floor. I have been asked to pull number 11, which is 4.1, and I...
Would anybody like anything else pulled? Councillor Van Meerbergen?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to pull and vote against, 2.5, 2.6, 2.7. The supply and delivery of traffic paint, I can get behind that one, no problem. But 6, 7, and 8 on the council agenda.
Okay.
And if you could call them maybe together to save time, that would be.
Yeah, I'll do that. And you'll have
Thank
a
you.
chance to debate the supply and delivery of paint when that comes up, if you'd like. But we will pull 6, 7, and 8 for you, and I'll keep them together. We'll just do them all together unless anybody has an objection to that. I don't see any. Okay. So anything else that anyone would like separate? Okay, I'll look to Councillor Hopkins to craft a motion based on all that feedback.
So I'd like to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, and 10 on the floor.
Okay, that's on the floor. Go ahead.
And I'd just like to say that the committee received the 5th reports from the Integrated Transportation and Environmental Stewardship Advisory Committees. We approved a number of contract awards for Colonel Talbot in the Wellington Gate Phase 3 and 4. Some highlights have also are the single source negotiated price for an Energreen tractor mower, and we also received a delegation request for tree planting in Harris Park.
Okay, so perfect. Now, not all of that's on the floor now. What we have, just for colleagues, is 1 through 5, 9 and 10. And so now I'll look for debate from anybody on those items. Okay, that's moved by the chair. We'll open that for voting.
Counselor Trosso? Noting a yes vote, closing the vote, motion carries 14-0.
Hopkins, maybe you can do Councillor Van Meerbergen's items next.
I'd like to put 6, 7, and 8 on the floor.
Okay, the chair puts those on the floor. Any discussion on those? Okay, I don't see any discussion. I'm just waiting for a second to get that up. So that's going to open for voting now on items 6, 7, and 8. Have your microphone, Councillor Hopkins.
Trosso is voting yes.
Closing the vote, motion carries 12-2.
Councillor Hopkins.
I'd like to now put number 11 on the floor.
Okay, chair puts number 11 on the floor. Is there any discussion on number 11? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be brief. I asked to have this pulled because I'll be voting no. I don't support asking our staff to revisit plans on parks design or tree planting based on one member of the public who's not a certified arborist providing comment at a meeting. So that's why I'll be voting no.
Okay, any other discussion on this? Okay. Seeing none, okay, then we'll open this for voting. Do you want to just vote manually, Councillor Trosso?
Counselor Trosso voting yes. Closing the vote, motion fails 6-8.
Councillor Hopkins?
And that is my report.
We're on to the ninth report of the Strategic Priorities and Policy Committee meeting. I'll go to Deputy Mayor Lewis to present that particular report.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I am prepared to put most of the report on the floor. I have been asked to pull item 8, that is the request for one-time funding for ARC-Aid. I've not been made aware of any other items that Council wishes to deal with separately.
Okay, would anybody like anything else on that SPPC agenda dealt with separately aside from number 8? All right, seeing none,
Then I am prepared to move 1 through 7 inclusive and 9 through 12 inclusive.
So that's on the floor, moved by the chair. Any discussion on all of those items? Okay, seeing none, we'll open those for voting.
Closing the vote, motion carries 14-0.
Go ahead.
And Your Worship, I'll now put item 8, the request for one-time funding for ARC-Aid on the floor.
Okay, that's on the floor, moved by the chair. I'll look for any discussion on this. Go ahead to the
Sorry,
chair.
Your Worship, I should have indicated as well that there is a request on 8 for parts A and B to be dealt with or voted on separately as well.
Okay, if there was a request to vote on them separately, perhaps you can, what motion are you making then?
Why don't I put item 8A on the floor first, just for clarity, and that is simply the one-time funding for ARC-Aid Street Mission.
Okay, so for those, people have give them time to kind of flip to the committee reports so they can see the pieces. Thank you for articulating that. I think that item has an A, a B, and a couple of it being noted clauses. So do you want to put the it being noted clauses with A or B?
Considering that they both pertain to A, let's put the it being noted. So we'll put 8A and both it being noted on the floor now.
Okay. So we'll do that. It'll be up in a second, moved by the chair. So all we're dealing with on this item is the A part and then the it being noted, which is the extension of one-time funding to Arcade and the two it being noted related to a communication and a delegation. Any discussion on that? Okay, Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you. I will be supporting this as I did at committee, and I'm glad that this came forward, that there will be a continuation of services for people who desperately need it. And it is in Old East Village, on the main street of the BIA, in an area that there's already an oversaturation of services. And I just want to be really clear on that I'm the one that moved the motion originally to have the homeless cold weather beds, that all of them be funded, all 120. I was the one that moved that. And here I am again supporting it in my ward, despite the pleas of the residents and the business around at the chaos that comes along with that. So I hear my fellow councillors saying downtown is better, the eyeball test says that the core is better. The core didn't get cold weather beds this winter. All of them are around within a radius of Old East Village. So I just want to be really clear. People say, oh, she doesn't support homeless funding. I'm the one that moved the motion for all 120 beds. Arcade came through and delivered. And it's been up to City Council to move an extension for 61 days so that people have someplace to go, so that the employees that have been trained have someplace to work, and that the volunteers can continue doing what they're doing. And as Sarah from the Arcade said, and I agree, we need a plan. There needs to be a plan that's going to come forward that is going to deal with the issues, deal with the people in a way that supports this whole of community response, that looks after the trained employees, make sure that we don't lose them, that they are kept to work in our community. And so I just really need to reiterate that I'm the one that did the 120 beds, that put it forward. It was successful thanks to Arcade. I am supporting it as the ward councillor, even though the eyeball test.
Okay, there's a point of order by Councillor McAllister.
Point of order.
Yeah, stand up, please.
I take issue with a councillor taking credit for a decision of council as a whole.
I'm fine to clarify.
So, yeah, I'll deal with the point of, so it's a point of privilege, not order. I will say, I don't think the councillor said it wasn't a decision of council. She may not have clarified that part. I think the councillor was referring to a specific motion that she brought forward and her support for this particular motion. I would presume that no member of council would not recognize the work, and that any motion comes forward requires a majority support. And so I think we can all recognize that. I understand where your concern is, but I've not heard anything that isn't accurate, and I'm just making very clear that, of course, these are decisions of majority of council. Yeah, so I'm gonna say that your point of personal privilege is dealt with, and the councillor can continue on.
I would just like to say to the mayor, word of caution, I think this us versus them language needs to be called out and addressed as it comes up. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Stevenson.
I'm not sure what that meant, but maybe we can talk about it offline. What I'm trying to say is, as the Ward 4 City Councillor, there are a lot of people who are going to be very unhappy with me for supporting this, and that were unhappy with me supporting the cold weather beds. So I will be doing whatever I can and bringing forward motions to address the safety concerns that were brought up by Arcade when they were here, that the vast number of people who need services creates a lack of safety for both the neighbors and the unhoused in that parking lot. So I'll be looking for council support there. And I'm also looking for council support in recognizing that their fellow councillor has supported services to the detriment of her ward. And so I just wanted to put that on the record. I do want to thank Arcade for the push, for council, and for the mayor and deputy mayor for bringing this motion forward. And I look forward to hearing what's next very, very soon, because there's a lot of desperation out there. Thank you.
Other speakers to this? Go ahead, Councillor Pribble.
Thank you, and I'm going to start spring of last year, and I'm going to come to this. I'm supportive of this as I was at the meeting, but I just want to kind of go us a little bit back and kind of how we got where we are. In March, end of March, when our last winter program finished, it was middle of April, roughly, that we were together and we were looking at next steps. When end of March, the funding finished, agencies, they let some places go, they let their staff go, and 2 weeks later, we were deciding what then. Then it came to summer. With the hubs, we were presented with the hubs. We were told we got the best in front of us. I made a comment, I don't know if it's the best, it's the only one I got here in front of me. So we approved it, we went forward. And when we were asking questions about the following winter encampments, winter response, the answer we received was, hopefully we will not need one because we'll have something better in place. Then came to November, December, when we were again behind the 8 ball and we were trying to scramble, what are we gonna address? Thank you very much, Arcade, that you came forward. And I do believe that their initiative last winter was the game changer because the core and especially the downtown has been better than ever before, or sorry, not than ever before, than during the last some years. So thank you, Arcade, for that. I really do believe that if I look at the plans we have currently, the strategic tables, we talk about Old East Village. One of the tables that was totally no report and no involvement was the business table. And this is the table that should be speaking on behalf of Old East Village businesses. And I really think that there's we need to improve the communications, the actions, the effectiveness, council, staff, and the strategic tables, because just what I said in the last 2 minutes, what I told you in terms of the deadlines, we are not proactive, we are reactive, which is for strategic planning, it's not strong, and it's cost us much more money than ever before. So thank you very much, Arcade, for winter. Thank you very much for coming forward, and with this plan saving us 25% of taxpayers' money, and I will certainly support it. Thank you.
Any other speakers on this part? Okay, seeing none, so we're going to open A and the B noted for voting.
Closing the vote, motion carries 14-0.
Deputy Mayor.
So, Your Worship, Part B, I did not support at committee. I won't be supporting it today, so I'm going to need another member of council to put Part B on the floor.
A member of council who's willing to put that on the floor for. Councillor Ferrer, are you willing to do it? Okay, so you can rise and take over the presentation of this. So you'll put SPPC 5.1B on the floor, and that is the part related to safe space and a referral to a future meeting of committee. So this is a motion for a referral of a motion. So that you're willing to present that? Okay, so that's a committee report, so it just needs the presenter. I'll look for speakers on this now. Okay, seeing that, Councillor Stevenson, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to ask my colleagues not to support this referral. We've got an agency there that we funded on a temporary basis. So there's been some talk about it being precarious funding, but it was not precarious. It was temporary, a temporary winter response from last year. And in fact, there was a commitment made to me and to the residents of Ward 4 that it would be temporary. It's been much longer than that date, and there's no longer the winter issues. We just closed a 15 resting space location for London Cares with no staff report, no decision of council. It was just done when I brought forward a motion asking for the rationale behind that, because there was a lot of concern in the area about what people were going to do without that access to the 24/7 15-bed resting space. Council said that they didn't need that explanation. So to say that this 15 spaces that is not 24/7, that's in a location that is not appropriate, and that was done just as an emergency measure, I don't think that there can be the pleas of, things are going to fall apart because of this. Staff did not recommend an extension for this funding. The whole of community response did not bring forward a recommendation. No one has said that this is a critical piece of the plan going forward. This is, again, it's up to council now, who supports them bringing forward a motion to come alongside with Arcade. We've not had a presentation. Their board and agency was not proactive in coming forward. So to do a referral to May 28th really doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't seem like good governance to think that, 3 days before the funding ends just doesn't give an agency time to wind down. And that's what needs to happen. It was a temporary funding. It was a temporary response. We closed London Cares, those 15 resting spaces. It's not been recommended. I'm asking as the ward councillor that commitment to it being temporary be honored, and that we allow this agency to find another location, find another funding source, and that there's an appreciation that Old East Village and the Ward 4 councillor is supporting the Arcade funding, and to please not, add to the oversaturation issues that we already have, to find another way, if this is what some councillors want, to find another way to do it that isn't going to go against the commitment that I had, and that honors the situation that we have there, the issues that we have directly related to that, and the issues that we have in general with that agency. So I'm asking colleagues not to support the referral, not to drag this on. It's going to look really bad May 28th. Then there's going to be all the rationale for how can we cut it off 3 days later. We're going to, inevitably be extending it just through having dragged it on to within 3 days of the funding end date. So I think it's fair to the community, to the women that it serves, to the people who work there, and to the agency itself to make a decision today so that people know what is going on rather than drag it on.
Okay, other speakers to this referral motion? Councillor, oh yes, sorry, I did have a councillor approval.
That's okay, thank you. I do believe this agency brings certain value to our community, and not just to the specific clientele that was always designated during our past conversations. Since last week, I've been every day to this area, a couple of times, even twice a day. I talked to many people on the street and also the residents. The residents, and I gotta tell you, I was very surprised how many residents actually, they were aware of this, and even our original temporary solution for this agency. And they're actually waiting for us to make a decision, because they're saying kind of what actually another council stated here in terms of keep extending for parking lots, that they will keep extending it. This is what the residents were asking also there. Are we planning to do it, or are we gonna make it permanent, or what is our plan? Based on all the information I have collected, and the feedback I have received, And on the floor last week, I asked our staff if they are working to get a safe space or if they are aware of safe space, if they are looking for a new place, new location. I was advised then they are not, as far as they know, they are not working together with them. Then I received from Safe Space similar indication that they are not. And I don't understand, and there's the kind of a broken communication, us staff and the strategic tables, that we did say it's permanent and we keep extending, and we are not keeping a word to the residents in that area that they will be moving to a different location, which we built our case on. So based on all these circumstances and what happened during the last week, I will not be supporting this additional funding. I actually believe that based on my experiences last 7 days, I'm not gonna wait till May 28th and then May 28th. I don't think that would be even fair to the agency. I do believe, again, certain values that this agency brings to our community, as I mentioned. I hope they come, I hope that they will, if they still feel that there is that need, they will come back with a strategic plan. Again, this is the funding, so maybe they do have the funding and maybe they can continue even past beyond May 28th, we don't know that. But bottom line is, in terms of us keeping a word to the residents, what we decided last year, I will not, and based on last week and the input I received from the residents and people on the street as well, I will not be supporting this additional funding. Thank you.
Councillor Ferreira.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the reason that this motion is a referral is because we did get a communication from Safe Space to directly communicate with the board. So this allows that. This allows us to get to the table and see what exactly can be done. With respect to temporary versus permanent, we are still within the time period of temporary, if it is temporary. There's clearly a need when you go out there. We see the need, and I fear that if we were to just seize these services, we will see that need way more visually on the streets in OEV. I do believe that you are seeing a beneficial impact to the area with Safe Space. If Safe Space, if there are work that can be done with the organization, we should be present. We should approach with a methodology that shows that we are present and we're willing to work with Safe Space. Any agency that I have in my ward, I am like that. Even if I disagree, I disagreed with the ARC originally on their funding. I let the ARC operate without any input and the ARC on what they were doing, and the ARC showed me at that William and Queens location that they can run a very good operation. That changed my vote. And I am trying to approach the ARC as I would approach all the other agencies in a way that would have us work together and have the most beneficial and amplified impact that we can see. So this is why you see this referral. This is why I'm supporting it. It is a referral for us to approach Safe Space and see what can be done for the area.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And I first of all want to thank the mover and the seconder for bringing this referral of the referral to the next SPPC meeting. I agree with Councillor Stevenson when it comes to there was no presentation, and I do think we need to hear from Safe Space on their funding, and that's what this referral is about. So I am hoping my colleagues will support the referral to hear further from Safe Space about their plan. And following up on Councillor Ferreira's comments about, and following up on Councillor Pribble's comments about somehow that this is going to be a permanent situation, I don't even think we're there right now. This is based on a temporary financing for Safe Space to the end of July 31st. This motion itself is a referral to hear from Safe Space. I appreciate everyone's comments here, but I want to hear from them. So I'm hoping you will support this referral.
Okay, other speakers? Councillor Trosa.
Thank you very much. My position has not changed. I think it's very important that we give this agency the opportunity to come in and talk to us and make the same type of presentation that we've heard from other agencies. And I think it would be a fundamental problem of just basic justice and fairness not to at least hear them. And in case anybody is not following this debate, what's on the floor right now is not funding this agency. What's on the floor right now is giving them a chance to come in and make a presentation to us. And from the sounds of what I'm hearing on this council through the chair, they've got a heavy burden. But they should be given the opportunity in the interest of fairness to make that case. I also want to take issue with the claim that really it's only fair to them to let them know the answer is no and they can shut down because of the lateness of the date. We were told by staff at the last meeting that they had a little bit of float because they had underspent their accounts a little bit. So even though the initial expenditure went till the end of May, they'll be okay if this carries on until a few days into June. So please don't make the claim that it's unfair to them not to give them the opportunity to come in and speak. Not only is it fair for them to come in and speak, I think that members of this council have an obligation to hear this existing agency out and to hear what they have to say. And I think that if we tell them, you know what, we don't even want to hear from you because we've already made up our minds. We've already made up our minds without you coming in and having the chance to make what's going to be a very difficult presentation where there's a high burden of persuasion. They should be given the opportunity to do that. So I think if you have any doubt about this, and it sounds to me there's a lot of doubt around this table, you should at the very least have a presentation from them and listen to what they have to say. And if you want to vote against the funding at that point, go ahead, vote against the funding at that point. But I think we should at least give them the opportunity to come in and state their case. Thank you very much.
Other speakers. Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I've heard people make a fairness argument on both sides. For me, this is actually not an issue about be fair to them, you're being fair to somebody else. We didn't invite my sister's place to come and make a presentation on the 28th. We didn't invite London Cares to come and make a presentation on the 28th. And nor did we receive proposals or communications or any expression of interest from them to continue, nor did we receive that from Safe Space. We received a motion on the day of the committee from councillors to consider adding this one organization as well. We only had one agency that was involved in winter response. After we extended previously from the end of March, so the funding would have run out already had there not been one extension given. But in that time from the end of March until now, we only had one agency that submitted a communication that said, hey, if you give us a little more runway, we got an idea for you about a year-round response. Only one took that initiative. And that's the one that we received the communication from at SPPC, and that's the one that I just supported in my previous vote, the temporary extension of funding for. The time for me is up. The winter response is scheduled to end at the end of this month, and that is, for me, where the line is drawn. I had one agency that was proactive. Now I have one agency being reactive, and I have other agencies who we've not even heard from. I know that even though we are approving today an extension for the ARC, there are still layoff notices going to staff this week because the extension that they are providing is not going to be the exact full suite that they have been providing through the winter response. So they have been preparing to contract already. even with this extension. So at this point, I am not moving forward with this, and I'm actually not moving forward with more extensions and temporaries. What I want to see moving forward is a year-round plan so that we're not dealing with funding requests every 2 months coming before us with agencies saying, I need this amount, I need that amount, and if you don't do this, then it's going to have such an impact. Yes, there are going to be people who are not going to receive service if funding isn't extended to some other organizations, but we have organizations like the ARC, like the Salvation Army, like the Men's Mission, who will be continuing to provide services in this community. Not every service is closing down. The winter response is retracting. It's May, it's not January. The winter response is retracting, and that's why I won't be supporting entertaining more requests for funding extensions.
Councillor Rahman.
Thank you, and through you, I want to thank my colleagues for the discussion today around this referral. I do still think it's important that we refer this item, and I just wanted to, one, let you know that I did receive communication from other organizations following saying, thank you for bringing forward the referral because it allows others that may not have known that this was part of the conversation that was happening to now bring and express interest. And I see this as an opportunity for a continuation of dialogue and conversation. And what my concern is if we don't, if we express by not going forward with the referral, and again, the referral is really an opportunity for the group to come to us and have some discussion. And I have to say that perhaps there hasn't been that willingness. And again, we have very few agencies and partners right now that are doing this very difficult work. And I do think it's really important that we take the opportunity to hear from them as often as possible about this work. One, I will say I come from an educational background and a lived experience background that does not allow me to have this fulsome understanding. So every time I'm invited in to learn, I will take that opportunity, but also every time there's an opportunity to hear and listen, I will do so. And I think what I see is we have a system and a process here at Council that maybe isn't fully understood by all of our community agency partners, organizations that are doing this very difficult work. And I want to make sure that the process by which we govern is not the reason why an organization is not going to end up doing the difficult and needed work they're doing. So if all we're doing is we're referring this so that we're giving groups, the organizations, the opportunity to come back to us and have a discussion, we are continuing to leave that space open for conversation. And we know what happens when we don't leave that space for conversation. We know what happens when we don't engage. And again, I think that there's opportunity for engagement, there's opportunity for learning. No matter what we end up doing in terms of funding or not funding in the end, we owe the organization an opportunity to have this discussion with us so that we can also learn from what they experienced this year. So keeping that dialogue open is important. I think it's incumbent on us. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Councillor Lehman.
Thank you. So I think what we're seeing here is a bit of a state that we find ourselves in. We had these discussions about 2 years ago, and we decided the best way to have it, just to look at this issue that we see on our streets, was to have a community of the whole. We have all the agencies that have been touched on in conversation today come into a room and develop a solution that everyone can get behind. And out of that came the idea of our hub system, which I supported because it had two fundamental properties. One, it had supportive care, mental health and addiction, and two, provide transition into more permanent housing. We had a generous benefactor come through with funding, substantial funding, at the beginning of that when that solution was proposed. We had a number of hubs announced. But I haven't heard much on that front lately. And I think what we're seeing right now is a rush into that void by various agencies. My concern is that we'll get back to what we tried to avoid, is kind of a hodgepodge funding model, as opposed to one where everyone of nonprofits, social agencies, government, residents got together and came up with a solution. So I supported Arcade because of the extension, because it had at its core the fundamental parts. So they had some supportive care, and also they were transitioning people into more permanent housing. But even when Arcade comes back to us in the summer, I will not be supporting more funding in that direction until I hear an update on where we are in the hub system. I got to know, are we still proceeding in that direction? And if not, then what is our alternative? Is our alternative to go back to where we seem to be now, agencies coming on their own, presenting their business cases and looking for funding? I didn't support Safe Space request at committee, and I'm not going to do it tonight. I will support Arcade for the reasons I mentioned. But I really need to hear where we're at in our hub system. Are we going forward with that? What's the advancements? What's impeding us? Is it because we didn't have the agencies come forward that are going to run the places? If not, why not? And if the hub system is going to go forward, then what's our plan? Are we going to go back to handling individual requests from different agencies?
Other speakers? Okay, this is on the referral, which is the committee's recommendation from the previous SPPC meeting. So that's what's on the floor, and we'll open that for voting.
For those having difficulties with the system, either press Control F5 or F5. Voting verbally as well is an option.
Councillor Stevenson votes no.
Thank you, noted.
Councillor Cuddy votes no.
Yeah, that's just under that. Okay.
Closing the vote. Motion fails on a tie, 7-7.
Okay, Councillor Ferreira, that concludes that item. I don't think there's anything else on the SPPC report, Deputy Mayor?
No, that also concludes the 9th report of the SPPC.
Okay, the next report is Planning and the Environment Committee. That's the 7th report of Planning and Environment Committee. I'll turn it over to Chair Lehman to present that report. Yes, Councillor Stevenson?
My understanding was if the referral failed, then we would vote on the motion.
So that motion doesn't automatically get on the floor in the absence of a failed referral. Yes, there's something else that could be done here or at a subsequent meeting, but there's nothing.
Okay, well, I'd like to move that motion.
You like to, which motion?
The motion that is to, the one we were referring. Otherwise, though. All right, I'll just withdraw that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, since you withdraw that, I'm going to talk to the clerk later about that sort of scenario, but there's nothing on the floor now. We can move on with the next committee report. Okay, it seems like everybody's okay with that. Go ahead, Councillor Lehman.
Thank you. Bringing forward the 7th report of the Planning Environment Committee. I've had one request to pull number 11. Have no other requests on any other items we dealt with separately.
Okay, so number 11 would be dealt with separately. Other planning committee items that colleagues would like dealt with separately? Okay, no, seeing none, go ahead and make a motion, Councillor Lehman.
So I'll move 1 through 10 and 12 through 14.
Okay, that's moved by the chair. Any debate or discussion on those items from the planning committee? Yes, debate on this? Go ahead, Councillor Cuddy. Microphone, Councillor.
Sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I just want to speak very briefly to number 12, development at Killaley Road and 1588 Clark Road. I want to thank members of PEC Committee for approving this unanimously. I want to thank staff and planning for all the work you did on this. I want to thank the developer, Sifton Properties, for their work. Your Worship, this is a really, really big thing for the East End. Deputy Mayor Lewis and I spoke about this at length. This is a development that we don't see in the East End, if ever, and certainly hasn't been in the past number of years. And this is an opportunity for us, Your Worship, to really show and showcase the East End, the Northeast of London, and the properties that we have out there. This is such a great development that we're going to be doing with Sifton Properties, and I want to speak very, very quickly about how cooperative Sifton Properties has been with my constituents in Ward 3. In fact, they actually Sifton moved the entranceway to the development to accommodate the lifestyle of one of my constituents, because the lights of cars would be shining through their windows. So this is an opportunity for us, Your Worship, to really celebrate a great opportunity for something that doesn't come to the East End. We often see this going to the west or the northwest, maybe Hyde Park or Oak Ridge, but we are so grateful to have such great partners in Sifton Properties. And again, I'm very thankful to the partners that we have in Sifton, to our team in planning, and again to my colleagues in PEC for passing this unanimously. I look forward to this development going forward. Thank you.
Any other comments on all of the planning items with the exception of 11? Okay, we're going to open that for voting.
Councillor Trussell? Indicating a vote of yes, closing the vote, motion carries 14-0.
Good. Thank you. I'll put number 11. The Deputy Mayor had requested that this be pulled. I believe he has an amendment. So this is regarding 379, 390 Hewitt Street and 748 King Street. I'll put that on the floor.
Okay, that's on the floor. I'll look for speakers. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, Your Worship. It is my intent to move a small amendment to this, and it would simply be the addition of one "it being noted" clause to the end. That clause would read, "It being noted further that SPA 23-097 for parking lot works," and this is a site plan approval application number that I'm referring to, has been received by the city, and should the applicant enter into a signed development agreement and demonstrate progress on the parking lot improvements before the expiration of this extension, the council shall consider an additional extension of no less than 2 years.
Okay, a seconder for that? A question? Let me make sure there's even a seconder first. A seconder, yes? Okay, so. Okay, maybe it's a point of order question. I just want to get the language cleaned up, so I'm going to allow it. Go ahead, Councilor Rahman.
Thank you, through you. Just as a shall or a may.
It is a shall consider.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. You can go ahead with the discussion.
Certainly. So, Your Worship, colleagues, this application came before us about a year ago for temporary parking lot use on a site which had been operating that way but was not within the zoning on that property. At that time, there was discussions, and the direction was that we wanted to see some parking lot improvements, but also that should the applicant proceed with their application and building permits to advance their additional tower, that council would consider up to a 3-year extension. At planning, we had the update from staff that in fact the building permits had been applied for. That was in process, so they had met the condition for us to consider 3 years. We chose to consider 1 year because we still want to see parking lot improvements that we asked for, some greening, some landscaping to go around so that it's not just an asphalt ocean on that site to be implemented. The applicant has submitted the site plan. Before that site plan can be finalized, of course, they have to enter into a development agreement with the city. At that point, they could proceed with their permits for the parking lot works. This is not a small investment, and they have communicated with me since Planning Committee that they estimate that this will be about $500,000. And understandably, they don't want to invest $500,000 in parking lot improvements if in 12 months they can't have it as a parking lot anymore. They had asked for 3 years. We said, you can have a year and come back to us in a year. What I'm suggesting by this it being noted is that we indicate, and again, it's not binding, it's shall consider, but to give the applicant some indication that council will hear them again for a further extension, that if they make progress, they can come back for an extension. To get the 2 years, that would give them the 3 years they originally requested, rather than having them come back again a third time for a third year. If they go ahead and make these improvements, it being noted would say, Planning Committee will hear it again next year and shall consider whether or not to give them the 2 years that would round out their 3-year request. It's not binding on us, but it does give them some surety that our intent is to hear their request again and to acknowledge that their original request was for 3 years.
Okay, other speakers to this amendment? Go ahead, Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you. I struggle with this one a little bit because we really, really need housing. And I really, really want development in Old East Village. And we've got a developer who's willing to build another tower, whose tenants in their other building don't have access to the parking spaces that they need, right? So we have Londoners having a really tough time these days. It's tough to find an apartment. It's tough to find a parking space that they need until we get a transit system up and running that maybe we won't need as many parking spaces. But right now, these tenants need a parking space. And we as City Council, when we do this, we're hurting those tenants who are left uncertain. Do you sign a lease? Are you still gonna have a parking space? Is it someplace that you wanna rent? And, we've got a developer who has come before us. They came last year asking for 3 years to use a parking space that would allow their tenants to continue to have parking. They're building enough underground parking to absorb all of that. So this is not going to be a long-term parking lot. There are plans for another tower as well. So I guess my question to staff is, they came before us last year asking for the 3 years. They're investing a huge amount of money in this area of the city, providing desperately needed housing. Is there something precluding us from giving them what they're asking for, which is the 3 years? I mean, is there something that stops us from doing this, or is this, or is that an option?
I'll go to our staff on this.
Thank you, through your worship. There is the London Plan policies that preclude this, as well as the core area strategy that precludes parking lots to continue. We would like to see them developed rather than as surface parking lots. And that would be a notwithstanding the direction of staff. But the proposed language that is before us gives us some guidance and gives that direction of how we can proceed and implement that direction.
Thank you, and through you, I understand the reasoning behind the staff report, but I'm wondering, as City Council, is this the best that we can do, or is there an option to give them the full amount that they're looking for?
So the question is a question of council's authority. Could we do basically more if we wanted to?
Thank you, your worship. Through you, yes, the council can decide 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And the policy framework is no more than the 3 years.
Okay, thank you. I do really appreciate the Deputy Mayor working with Medallion on this. And we have a letter before us that is in the added agenda or on the agenda here, where they're saying they're not sure they're going to go ahead with this under the hope that this council would do them the honor of granting another couple of years parking lot there. There is not a lineup of people wanting to develop that spot. We have tenants who desperately need the parking. They are being asked to spend $325,000 to do the parking lot improvements, to make it better and make it more in alignment with the London Plan. They are willing to do that, even though they're only going to have that lot for 3 years. They know that we're going to revoke that at the end of the 3 years. But they are willing to spend $325,000 and lose 19 parking spaces. They are also going to pay $303,000 for the building permit, $314,000 for the park fee, and then they're going to pay to demolish the building, and then they're going to pay to build the building. And for some reason, we're saying we're not sure we're going to give you the 3 years. We're going to give you one at a time and hope that you're going to continue to make that investment in the hope that council would grant it again. I'm really concerned. And the reason I'm concerned is the McCormick property. It came before council. There was all kinds of concessions in terms of height. The public was so excited that we were going to have a development there. I was excited as a new councillor. There was a small little issue over the park. Nobody thought that was going to be a big deal. Well, it was a big deal. That building is falling down. It is causing all kinds of public safety concerns. And we were this close. We were this close to a deal, but we didn't settle on the park. So we can say, yeah, one more year and then come on back and we'll issue you another 2 years.
30 seconds.
Do we know that Medallion is going to do that? Because they have lots of opportunities around. So I would like to see, and I'd like to move an amendment that this, it being further noted, that we take out the consider and that council shall do an additional extension of no less than 2 years. So just removing the word consider, which means they still have to come forward, they have to pay the fees, they have to take the time to come before council. So it's a bit of a compromise.
I understand. I know you want to make the case on that. Give me 1 second. Okay, so colleagues, I'm just going to ask you to stop talking so I can get some information. So can you amend an amendment? For sure you can, but I just want to make sure the way that we give permission for these things, I need to go to staff on, if we drop the consider, does it actually do the intent of what the councilor's saying, or does something actually still need to come back to us for approval at some point? I'm just trying to determine that because I don't know the process you guys do, so I'm going to ask you if you can comment on that for me.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, we would need to bring back another bylaw that would be very clear and explicit for those 2 years. It is a timeline, and there's an exact date that's provided as part of the bylaw.
So, Councillor, I know you could amend this, but from my understanding of the answers that the staff and the clerk have given, shall consider is right. It would force it to come before us. We can't prejudge a bylaw that would come before us that would create that permission because we have to be open to the discussion debate at the time. So, although that could be done, it would be the process that we have to follow to do it. So we can't pre-guarantee a future bylaw coming before council on how we would vote because it still would have to come before council. So I understand your intent of what you're trying to do, but without us going back and rewriting the bylaw in this moment, we would not be able to proceed in the way that we're proceeding now. So it's not, you could strike consider if you wanted, but it's not going to change the fact that a decision still has to come back before council for consideration, and people are free to vote how they want in that moment.
Yes, and I understand that. And if it said, if we took out the consider, yes, council could always go back on that and do what they want next year, but at least it would be council saying to them right now that if you do X, Y, and Z, we're saying that we would. You know, things can come up, things can change, but we're giving them the commitment that says if you do X, Y, and Z, we will approve it, knowing there's no guarantee, but we make that commitment.
Right. So what I'm saying is, yes, you can amend it to strike that. It does not mean in this moment they're guaranteed that. So I just don't want any councillors to have any false pretenses about what that mean. Like a decision in a bylaw still needs to come back, triggered by the it being noted clause, for us to make a decision linked to the other components of that. So you can move the amendment, and I can look for a seconder, but I just want to be clear that we're not going to, we can't prejudge the decision of council because it has to come back. So it's not going to cause a guarantee in any sort of way.
I think that's fair. It just at least gives them the notice of where council sits right now, because at committee, a few said that they wouldn't do it.
I guess you want to proceed with.
I would like to proceed.
So you're amending the amendment to strike which part?
Remove consider.
Then it actually doesn't make sense if you do that, because it says shall.
Shall approve. I don't know what the wording is. Authorize.
And we can't put approve. 'cause it
proceed with?
Presupposes. You can't pre-approve it. I don't know if we're going to get to the language that's going to make you satisfied with this, because it will be still considered by council. Like, consider is probably the right word. We have to consider the bylaw before us for debate. Striking considered leaves it blank. Other words are going to mean the same thing. We cannot put a word in there that guarantees any sort of approval, because it has to come forward through an actual process. So I may not have an answer for you, Counselor, but the clause needs to make sense for you to amend it, and you can't get it to a point where it's a guarantee.
Is there a way to amend it that gets us as close as possible to a guarantee? Because
So, okay, I have to deal with the point of order. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm wondering if there's in the book, I believe I saw something about efficient meetings, and I'm just wondering if this kind of falls outside the perspective, because I think we spent about 4 or 5 minutes talking about language for this amendment, and just given we're all busy, I'd love to see us move forward more efficiently, and if this could be dealt with at a later time more efficiently, that'd be great.
So yes, that's a thing. No, I have not deployed that yet, and I'm not going to in this moment because we're very close to done, and now we're doing another thing that takes more time. So you can call a point of, you can challenge the chair, but I'm not going to invoke that clause at this moment. Okay. I'm going to come back and say no. Like, consider is the strongest word. We will consider it. We shall consider it. That means it's going to come before us if they trigger this. That is the consideration. That's probably the best you can do. So I think you can just finish your comments. You got about 10 seconds left. I don't think an amendment here is going to be any stronger than it is. Okay?
I want to do everything we possibly can do to ensure this development proceeds.
Thank you. Any other speakers on the amendment? Okay, let's open that for voting.
This is the amendment to the amendment.
No, this is just the amendment. There's no amendment to the amendment. This is just what Deputy Mayor Lewis put on the floor.
Councilor Van Meerbergen indicating a vote of yes. Closing the vote, motion carries 11-3.
Okay, so now the as amended motion, you willing to move that? Could you just stand up and move it then? Okay. So as amended, I need a seconder for the as amended motion. Okay, well, let me get an as amended motion on the floor first. Seconded by, sorry, Councilor Lehman, did you want to present it so that he can sit down? Okay.
So you need a mover.
I need a mover.
Motion as amended, and I'll just second.
Okay, that's fine. You're both on it. Okay, so now it's the as amended motion. Councilor Stevenson.
Is it possible for me to make an amendment to take it from 1 year to 3 years in Part A?
There's a bylaw associated with this. Does the bylaw need to be rewritten to accommodate that? So it's a refer back with that direction. Councilor Stevenson, I need your microphone. Go ahead.
Yes, that's correct, Your Worship.
So Councilor Stevenson, the answer is no, you can't amend it here. You could refer it back with the direction to amend it but it'd have to go back to staff to rewrite the bylaw, because there's a bylaw associated with this before council that we would need to change to actually do it. There's not an alternate bylaw. So, no.
I'll move the referral then.
Okay. Councillor Stevenson wants to move a referral with a direction. Okay. Councillor Stevenson, so I'm not writing your motion for you, but I understand your intent. So you want to move a referral to a subsequent meeting of council with a bylaw that has a period not to exceed 3 years. Is that what you want to do? You got it.
I'm looking for, I don't know what to do here. I want to ensure this proceeds, and so they're looking, they're going to do 900,000.
No, Councillor, you don't get to debate now. If you have a motion, you got to prepare it ahead of time. I'm trying to help you how best I can in the moment. There's a bylaw associated with this. I think it's clear. It is very difficult to change it here. It's a referral back to council or committee for the change.
Yes. The
That's
answer is
the
yes,
only
then.
thing that can be done. So you want to move that referral? Yes? Okay. To council or committee? What's your referral to? Okay. Is there a seconder for that? Referral of this back to PEC to consider a bylaw with an extension of 3 years? Yes? All right, that's on the floor for discussion. Now look for speakers.
So just a point of order, Your Worship, that would make the previous amendment null and void. So if that amendment is going to be moved and seconded, it would also have to strike the it being noted that we just passed.
It's not, we're not approving it now, we're referring the whole thing. So it all has to get cleaned up at committee. So that can go back too, but the committee's gonna have to clean this up if council
So
approves this.
point of order, the referral is to a subsequent meeting of council with a new
No,
bylaw?
it's to planning committee.
It's back to planning.
That's what the councilor wants. And that's what the other councilor seconded, so it's on the floor. Okay, so this is debate on this referral. Go ahead, Councilor Rahman.
Thank you, and through you. So I'm confused because I thought that's what we already did at PEC. We already looked at this. It was originally considered for the 3 years within the report, and now it's, so I'm not seeing what's different.
That's right. And so if a majority of council wants to override the work that PEC did and send it back for more, council has that right. But you're right, this discussion did occur at committee, but sometimes things get referred back. It'll depend on if the vote is successful or not, whether that occurs. Go ahead.
Sorry, and through you. So the difference in it being noted versus what's now on the floor is that one was tied to the completion of some upgrades as well as the application. Is this one no longer tied to that?
A referral takes precedent, so referring back to the committee refers all of this back. Nothing is approved. So all council did was amend the committee's recommendation, but we've not decided on any of this yet because it's only an as-amended motion, and that as-amended motion got referred. So council has, although they've added to the committee's work, has made no final decision on this, and then a referral takes precedent and it all goes back. And I would admit there needs to be a little bit of cleanup here by the committee if council approves this. But we've not, although we voted on that, we've not decided on it. Okay, so on the referral back to committee, any other speakers? Go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate council being willing to consider this referral. As I said, the McCormick property I don't want to see that happen here. We received, the reason why I'm asking the planning committee to relook at this is we received a letter dated May the 12th from Medallion that says that council, they're requesting council grant the original request to extend the existing temporary bylaw as approved for the additional 3 years in order to alleviate the ongoing parking issues related to the adjacent apartment complex. They say here that the requested 3-year extension will be needed, not convenient, not what they would like to see, but will be needed to build the proposed Phase 3 development, 24-story apartment building, including some affordable units at Dundas and Hewitt Streets, and get occupancy. If only a 1-year extension was granted, which is what is before us today, the upgrades to the surface parking lot would not be logical financially with that short of a time frame. It's a $325,000 investment in that parking lot. There's over $600,000 in fees that would be coming into the city, and we would get a guarantee, or a closer guarantee of this actually being built. So I really think it's worth committee's time to just look at this again, given this new letter from Medallion saying that, in fact, they say here, the extension of the 3 years for the existing temporary zone will allow Medallion to complete construction of the Phase 3 tower, which includes an extra 188 parking spaces. But they're saying that this will, the 3-year extension would also prevent any further undue stress on the current tenants who are utilizing the parking. There's a very important 2-page letter here that I really think Planning and Environment Committee needs to have a look at. I do not want to face the Ward 4 residents and explain to them again that we got to the 99th yard and we let it go. So please support this referral. We can have the discussion at planning and come to council with something that is going to truly support our commitment to housing and affordable housing options.
Okay, anybody else on the referral? Okay, this is on the referral back to Planning Committee. We'll open that for voting.
Councillor Trosso. Closing the vote, motion fails 4-10.
Okay, so now we have the as amended motion, which are before the referral. Any further discussion on the as amended motion for anybody who hasn't spoken yet? Okay, we'll open that for voting.
Councillor Hillier.
I vote yes.
Thank you. Closing the vote, motion carries 12-2.
Go ahead.
Thank you. That concludes the 7th report of the Planning Environment.
Okay, we're on to added reports. There's a report from council in closed session. I'm going to ask Councillor McAllister to present the items from closed session.
So all these are my reports. I'm happy to report out on the council in closed session. Number 1, partial property acquisition, 977 Oxford Street East, 836 Quebec Street, infrastructure renewal program. That on the recommendation of the Deputy City Manager, Finance supports with the concurrence of the Deputy City Manager, Environment and Infrastructure, on the advice of Director, Realty Services, with respect to the property located at 977 Oxford Street East, 836 Quebec Street, further described as part of lots 10, 11, and 12, Plan 423, designated as Part 1, Plan 33R-21334, in the City of London being part of PIN number 08285-0089 containing an area of approximately 0.056 acres, 2,466 square feet, as shown on the location map attached to Appendix B, for the purpose of providing sufficient width to accommodate the addition of bike lanes on Quebec Street and left turn lane on Oxford Street East. The following actions be taken. A, the offer submitted by 235167 Ontario Incorporated, the vendor, to sell the subject property to the city for the sum of 120,000. Oh, wait, no, is that 120,000? No. Sum of, yes, 120,000. Be accepted, subject to terms and conditions as set out in the agreement as Appendix C. And B, the financing for this acquisition be approved as set out in source of financing report, hereto as Appendix A. Number 2, property acquisition, 25 Queens Place, that on the recommendation of the Deputy City Manager Finance Supports and with concurrence of Deputy City Manager Planning and Economic Development, on the advice of the Director of Realty Services with respect to the property known as 25 Queens Place, owned by Habitat for Humanity Heartland Ontario Incorporated, containing an area of approximately 1.84 acres, legally described as part lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, A and B, block 1, plan 296, third, designated as parts 2, 3, and 4, plan 33R-20314 in the City of London, County of Middlesex. The property, as shown outlined in Appendix C of the staff report, the following actions be taken. The agreement of purchase of sale, the agreement as Appendix B submitted by the Corporation of the City of London, the purchaser, to repurchase the property from Habitat for Humanity Heartland Ontario Incorporated for the sum of $595,000 be accepted, subject to the terms and conditions set out in the agreement. B, the financing for the acquisition be approved as set out in the source of financing report, hereto as Appendix A. Number 3, settlement agreement 977-993 Wellington Road, Wellington Gateway Project, that on the recommendation of the Deputy City Manager, Finance and Sports, on the advice of the Director, Realty Services, with respect to property at 977-993 Wellington Road, further described as part Lot 25, Concession 2, designated as Part 1 on Expropriation Plan ER 1545931 and Part 1 on Expropriation Plan ER 1545933 in the City of London as part of PIN 08494-0341/42 as shown on the location map as Appendix B for the purpose of future road improvements to accommodate the Wellington Gateway Project. The following actions be taken. The settlement agreement for Wellington Plaza Holdings to settle the outstanding expropriation compensation to the property owner for the sum of $38,300 be accepted, subject to the terms and conditions as set out in the agreement as Appendix C. And sorry, that was A. This is B. The financing for this acquisition be approved as set out in the source of financing hereto as Appendix A. 4. Property acquisition, 8 Raywood Ave, Wellington Gateway Project, that on the recommendation of the Deputy City Manager Finance Supports with the concurrence of the Director of Construction and Infrastructure Services on the advice of the Director of Realty Services with respect to property located at 8 Raywood Ave, further described as part of lots 26 and 27, Plan 467 4th, designated as Part 1, Plan 33R-6320 in the City of London, being all of PIN 08358-0100 LT, containing an area approximately 6,070 square feet as shown on the location map as Appendix B for the purpose of future road improvements to accommodate the Wellington Gateway Project. The following actions be taken. The offer submitted by Matthew Leering, the vendor, to sell the property to the city for the sum of $555,000 be accepted, subject to the terms and conditions as set out in the agreement as Appendix C. And B, the financing for this acquisition be approved as set out in the source of financing report hereto as Appendix A. I'll move that report.
So you're going to move 1 and 2, and then the Wellington Gateway ones you're going to move separate. So we'll just do items 1 and 2 first. That's on the floor by Councillor McAllister. Is there any discussion on 1 and 2? No? This is 1 and 2, right? This is just 1 and 2. Okay? We'll open that for voting.
Trosso votes yes.
Thank you. Noted. Closing the vote, motion carries 14-0.
And now 3 and 4, Councillor McAllister's moving. These are the ones associated with the Wellington Gateway. Any discussion? Okay, we'll open that for voting.
Closing the vote, motion carries 13-1.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McAllister. Appreciate it. Deferred matters, there's none. Inquiries? No one gave me a signal for any. Okay. Emergent motions, there's none. On to bylaws. So what we'll do for... Okay. Okay, so here's what we're going to do for the bylaws. We're going to do all the bylaws plus the 2 addeds, with the exception of the Wellington Gateway bylaws. Then we'll do the Wellington Gateway bylaws after. Does anybody want anything else pulled out separate from that? Councillor Hopkins.
I'm not sure if it's, the bylaw has been changed for Bill number 164, which is Hewitt and King.
Are you want it separate, or are you asking if it needs to be changed?
No, it has, I'd just like to vote on it separate if there's another change to be made on that bylaw.
All we did for that was, from the committee's recommendation, was add an "it being noted" clause, so that's not attached to the bylaw.
Okay, I'd just like to vote on it separately.
Okay, all right, so you want the bylaw voted on separately. Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder for bills 153 to 165, including the 2 addeds, with the exclusion of the 164 that Councillor Hopkins just asked to be out, and the 2 Wellington Gateway ones are out. Moved by Councillor Cuddy, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lewis. We'll open first reading for voting.
Councillor Stevenson?
I vote yes.
Noted. Thank you. Closing the vote, motion carries 13-0.
Okay, mover and seconder for second reading, Councillor Hopkins, seconded by Councillor Ferreira. Any discussion on second reading of these bills? Seeing none, we'll open that for voting.
Closing the vote, motion carries 13-0.
Third reading of bills moved by Councillor Lehman, seconded by Councillor McAllister. We'll open third reading for voting.
Closing the vote, motion carries 13-0.
Okay, next I'll look for a mover and a seconder for the 2 bylaws associated with the Wellington Gateway pieces that came out of in camera, moved by Councillor Hopkins, seconded by Councillor Trossau. That's first reading, so I'll open first reading for voting.
Councillor Trossau indicates a vote of yes. Closing the vote, motion carries 12-1.
Second reading for these two bills, moved by Councillor Ferreira, seconded by Councillor Lehman. Any discussion on second reading? Okay, we'll open that for voting.
Councillor Trossau indicates a vote of yes. Closing the vote, motion carries 12-1.
Okay, third reading of these. Mover and a seconder, please. Seconded by Councillor Pribble. We'll open third reading for voting.
Councillor Pribble?
Voting yes.
Thank you. Closing the vote, motion carries 12-1.
Okay, and now we'll deal with 164, which is the bill that Councillor Hopkins asked to be pulled separately. I'll look for a mover and a seconder for first reading of that. Councillor Stevenson, seconded by Councillor Cuddy. We'll open first reading for voting moment.
Closing the vote, motion carries 11-2.
Okay, second reading of this bill. Councillor Pribble, seconded by Councillor Stevenson. Reading? Okay, we'll open that for voting.
I vote no.
Thank you. Closing the vote, motion carries 11-2.
And third reading of this bill. I'll look for a mover, Councillor Cuddy, seconded by Councillor Stevenson. We'll open third reading for voting.
I vote yes.
I vote yes. It's frozen.
Confirming by vote yes. Thank you. It's frozen.
I also vote yes. Mine crashed.
Councillor Cuddy votes yes.
Thank you. Closing the vote, motion carries 11-2.
Okay, that completes the bylaws. Thank you for that, colleagues. We're on to adjournment. I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Deputy Mayor Lewis, seconded by Councillor McAllister. All those in favor by hand.
That motion carries.
Great, we're adjourned. Thank you.